I believe it's time, don't you? Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, please. This is the City of Canton Council meeting, July the 11th, 2019. If you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Goodman?
Every vow. Father, we thank you for this evening, for all that are gathered here. We ask that you be with all of our citizens. Help us to decide all the issues that come before us tonight, and just be with each and every family that lives here in our city. All these things we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you. Okay, you have your agenda, and we will have consideration to approve that agenda if there are no changes.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to request that we do an executive session for litigation.
Okay. I'll add that on.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion. Mr. Grant made the motion. Mr. Young seconded the motion to approve the agenda as amended with the executive session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Belinda Hardy has an announcement or two. If she could go ahead. Don't you have some announcements? Okay. Go ahead and do those, and then we'll move on.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to let you know that it is an amazing, busy time in the Main Street office, which is a great thing. The farmers market, as many of you know because you attend, is having a great season. We have an average of around 55 vendors each week. We've done a little switching around because of some weather possibly coming in this weekend. So what we've done is save these dates again. I gave them to you last month, but I want to revise. The tomato sandwich day, and I've heard there's home-baked bread contest that goes along with this, is July the 27th. The pie eating contest, which you all have one of these in front of you. I'm sorry, but there is a limit of 3 pies that you may enter, so make sure that you only do 3. I'm going to hold you to that. So the pie eating contest, or the pie contest, excuse me, is August the 3rd, and there will be a pie eating contest also. The watermelon day, which was supposed to be this Saturday, has been rescheduled to August the 17th. Amazing theater that we have here in town. It's such a treasure. And so there's some great things happening there. The new curtain installation will be complete tomorrow. The first 2 summer kids movies have been extremely successful. Mary Poppins was just unbelievable yesterday with the number of people there, and it was sold out in both performances. We've got Wonder Park and Spider-Man coming up the remaining part of this month, and then LGE has been the sponsor for that event. Saturday date night will begin on Saturday, August the 10th, also sponsored by LGE. The movies will be The Wedding Singer, Top Gun, Dirty Dancing, and Pretty Woman in that order. So because of that, we've got this amazing weekend coming up in August. We do this every once in a while where there's just so much going on. So follow along with me. The first Friday that we had last week, it was like an on again, off again, on again kind of thing. Thank you, Mayor, for presenting the flowers and introducing our Miss Georgia, Victoria Hill. But luckily, members only offered to reschedule. So on Friday, August the 16th, we are having a back-to-school bash, and that's going to be in Brown Park, so make sure you save that date. Then the next morning, again, the watermelon eating contest, and then Dirty Dancing will be at the theater. Kentucky Headhunters will be at Canton River Rocks at Etowah River Park, so that's all in one weekend. And then the band for the August 2nd, First Friday installation, will be Skipper Grace. So got a busy time coming up. And lots of other details are being worked on, so I can give you more information.
Sounds good.
Y'all got any questions for me?
I remember the days when people said, there's nothing to do here. Now I don't have time to do
I
everything.
can't say that now.
I remember when there wasn't anything to do here.
When I first came here 13 years ago, it was, you had to
pretty
search
nice,
for
too.
something to do. So thank you.
Well, it's a great collaboration with a lot of different groups coming together to make these events happen, and so great.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Before we get into the main body of our meeting, we have a public hearing for our proposed budget for the fiscal year 2020 and the setting of the city's millage rate at 5.40. Mr. Peppers?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Canton is prepared to move forward with the adoption of our property tax millage rate and our beginning of our fiscal year 2020 operating budget approval. We operate utilizing a variety of fund sources, including ad valorem taxes on real and personal property, sales taxes on consumable goods, enterprise fund revenues, user fees, fines through municipal court operations, development-related revenues through impact fees. Our charter provides that the procedures related to the approval of an operating budget and the adoption of a millage rate, and tonight is one of those items addressed in the charter. In 2017, the city entered into an agreement with Cherokee County to do our tax billing and collection on our behalf. And in accordance with that agreement, we are required to provide them with a millage rate by August 1st. Millage rate is a number by which each $1,000 of real and personal property is taxed to provide funding for the operation of the city. The Cherokee County tax assessor is responsible for calculating the fair market value of the real and personal property in the county, which includes property in our city. That fair market value is then discounted to a taxable value, which is 40%. That taxable value is then multiplied by the millage rate to determine the taxes due for said property. So, for example, if James Smith has a home that has a fair market value of $200,000, that is multiplied by the discounted rate of 40% for a taxable value of $80,000. That $80,000 is then multiplied by the millage rate of 5.4, making the total liability of taxes to the city $432 for a home valued at $200,000. According to state law, if the City of Canton utilizes any rate that is different than a revenue-neutral millage rate, the city must have 3 public hearings to adopt that rate. The schedule for those hearings included a hearing that we had earlier today at 11 a.m. We have the hearing tonight, and the third public hearing will be on Thursday, July 25th at 6 p.m. in this same room. The current millage rate is 5.4 mills and remains the lowest millage rate that the city has had in the last 26 years. In 2017, the city began a contract with Cherokee County to provide fire and emergency services. We joined with the cities of Ball Ground, Holly Springs, and Waleska to receive those services on behalf of our incorporated residents. Cherokee County assesses a fire district tax of 3.269 mills to pay for those services. The City of Canton, along with the City of Holly Springs, pay a flat fee to the county based on the multiplication of that millage rate of 3.269 mills by our total tax digest. So instead of it showing up on our residents' bills as a separate line item, it shows up within our own millage rate. We have the lowest millage rate in the county. Our effective maintenance and operations millage rate is 2.131 mills, and it's less than half that of any other municipality in the county that participates in the county's fire services, and a full mill less than the city of Woodstock. In addition to operating under the lowest effective millage rate in the county, our residents also benefit from the lowest sales tax in Georgia at 6%. And our seniors receive a full exemption of property taxes on the fair market value of their home up to $280,000. Our proposed fiscal year 2020 operating budget is $53,267,198. That is an overall increase of $7.8 million over last year. Of that increase, $1.1 million is attributed to an increase in the general fund. The remaining $6.7 million comes from increased revenues in sales taxes, impact fees, user fees, and fund balance in the enterprise fund. The current proposed budget does not include any increases to water, wastewater, sanitation, or stormwater rates for our residential customers. The city operates with 124 full-time employees. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the compensation costs for state and local government employees nationwide had increased by 3% for the prior 12 months ending in March 31st of this year. We have also been reviewing budgets of local jurisdictions around us, and so our current budget reflects a 2.8% cost of living allowance across the board for all city staff. That equates to an average of 55 cents per hour per employee. The budget reflects the addition of 5 new personnel, which includes 2 new police officers, a police department support bureau assistant, a probation officer for municipal court, and a custodian. With those new positions, the Canton Police Department will grow to 60 employees with 52 sworn positions. The general fund reflects the elimination of the former police department buildings budget, since they have moved into the 151 Elizabeth Street building and there's other services in there. We've transferred that fund into the general government buildings line item to consolidate all of those under general government buildings. The budget reflects the addition of 7 vehicles to our fleet. Of those, 5 are in the police department. 3 of those 5 are replacement vehicles, and 2 are for those new officer positions. One of the other vehicles is in Public Works with a new Ford F-150 and grapple trailer that can be used for our brush pickup and other Public Works projects. And we have 1 vehicle in Building and Safety Services. The proposed budget is an increase of $1.1 million in general fund expenditures. Of that, $500,000 or 45% of the increase is for the contractual increase in payments to Cherokee County Fire Services based upon new development and increases in our tax digest. 18% is for general government building projects. 11% is for specialized planning projects, including housing study and a Marietta Road Community Initiative study. 7% for in-house probation management program. 4.2% is an increase for personnel expenditures in the police department, and 3.9% is an increase in parks maintenance. The remaining 9.8% is shared across all categories of the budget, including 10% increase in health insurance, 2.8% across the board cost of living allowance, 2% increase in electricity, 5% increase in property and casualty insurance, and 5% increase in workers' comp. Based on those specific expenses, increases reflected in the budget areas show that areas such as elections are up based on historical data. Human resources budget is also up, but that's a transfer in of a position from the finance department, so you'll see that finance budget is reduced. And then general administration shows a significant increase to professional services as we have completed the study of SIC to NAICS codes for business licenses. Since 2013, the city's utilized reserves to keep property taxes low. In the current fiscal year, council opted to utilize $1.5 million in transfers from Water and Wastewater Enterprise Fund. The FY20 budget utilizes $871,000 in unassigned fund balance or reserves, and an additional $500,000 from the Water and Wastewater Enterprise Fund. New housing starts are driving growth within the city, but these also come at a cost. While the senior tax exemption provides a benefit to attracting new citizens, last year there was a growth in exempted properties from 2,074 exemptions to 2,308 exemptions, or 11% more properties that are paying reduced taxes, if paying taxes at all, for the services that those residents demand, which include public safety. This is a particular hit to the city's budget, as the cost of fire services with the county is based on the total digest, which includes those exempted properties. Without the use of unassigned fund balance and a transfer from the Water and Wastewater Enterprise Fund, the current proposed budget would require a millage rate of approximately 6.8 mils. We appreciate your consideration of our proposed FY 2020 operating budget and the proposed millage rate, and we look forward to working with you to answer your questions, answer any questions from the public during this process as we continue to move the city forward efficiently and effectively.
Okay, thank you. What we'll do now is open up the public hearing for public comment, and if anyone wanted to speak that did not sign up when you came in, you need to make sure you do that. But the only one that we have to speak now is Mr. Weaver. Thomas?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for recognizing me to speak. For the benefit of Council Member Goodwin and other members of the public who were not here earlier this morning, I would like to restate again that I support the administration's recommendation for the budget millage rate as advertised in the county's legal organ and also the enabling ordinance that's been presented to you for those funds. Thank you. I hope that each of you received the email that I had sent some 2 to 3 hours ago. I was hoping to dispel any ambiguity that may have happened during your conversation with the city's administration after the public hearing was earlier closed in regards to my request for your assent to earmark funds for the lockers at the newly branded Canton Municipal Court Public Safety Complex. I hope that my letter shored up a great deal of your concerns, and I'm always available for you. If any of you have any other questions, I'd be happy to share my thoughts in addition to my writing. Thank you. I also wanted to place one other remark, as many of you may recall, in regards to the library portion that I had alluded to earlier that I believe was also raised by other members of your peers. During your talks between each other and the city's administration. I've since learned a great deal regarding that and had also had the impromptu opportunity to speak to Mr. Ingram prior to the meeting. I do ask that $20,000 that was appropriated last year, I understand that with the remarks that Mr. Peppers has made, that you have to make concessions based on voter mandated funds and also operational costs for the city, and obviously, you can't give everyone everything that they would like. However, if the service delivery strategy that is currently being ironed out between the city and the county and others is unable to deliver on at least a portion of that library commitment, I would ask that you take that 35% discretionary portion of the car rental tax funds and allocate at least a percentage of that, because I also think that the library is a great service. And I'm not saying that solely through the lens of being selfish that I use it, but I do think it is a great service, in addition to the theater and other things. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's the only individual that signed up to speak at the public hearing. Let me say that an awful lot of work has gone into this document. The staff has done an amazing job, I think, in putting this document together. And it looks like it's about as good as we get. I don't have too many criticisms on one or two. I've always got to have one or two, but you know, I talked about those at the early meeting, and I'm satisfied now, and I hope that the council is satisfied with the items that are the answers and so forth that were given to us at our 11 o'clock public hearing on any questions that the council has. But we'll open it up now. We'll close the public hearing portion and open it up for the council to have any comments or questions or anything that they would like. Mr. Grant.
Concerning the library fund, I also had an opportunity to have a couple conversations since our 11 o'clock meeting with members of the board there, and rightfully so, they have some concerns, and I can understand when a line item goes away. And though I understand that, you know, that we would have funding there and there in case of issues with the service delivery strategy and that the contingency funding is in place, as we discussed before, that the budget is a working document, and that because something is budgeted doesn't mean that we are going to spend it necessarily. But I was wondering if given those considerations and for peace of mind purposes, if we could in good faith, could we add that line item back in or take from that contingency from it, just so it's there, just to show that our commitment is there? Would that hurt? Would that help?
So it's all up to council. I mean, if y'all want to put the line item in the budget, that's fine. Our perspective, at least at the staff level, has been that, that's one of the big issues that comes up as part of that service delivery negotiation is the fact that the library is receiving funding from the county's general fund, which you pay in as a county taxpayer. If the city turns around and makes a second contribution, then you as a taxpayer are contributing twice towards a service that an unincorporated residents only contribute to once. And so that's kind of that service delivery argument. Initially when it came to me that there was some frustration last year when the city reduced the budget for the library, I asked the library to provide me a copy of their overall budget. Our contribution is 0.5% of their total overall budget. So I understand their concerns, but I think it's a little bitty piece of what's going on. If it's in the budget, that's fine. If you want to put it in the budget and hold off on it, on actually cutting a check until after service delivery, that's fine too.
And I wouldn't, advocate for cutting a check before anything. I just wonder if it's something, and it may just be a head nod or something good faith, but.
Let me say, I don't think there's any doubt about it. We're not going to leave the library hanging.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, I don't think. But I think it may be a tool that can help us in our discussions with the county regarding the service delivery strategy. And, we could always come back and put it in regardless of whatever happened in the discussion. But,
I think that.
we get a benefit from that library, no doubt about it, and our residents do. But yet, if indeed the scenario is that our residents are paying, and then from city taxes, and then the county is paying some of our tax money too, then we may or may not be paying what we think we're paying for the operation of the library. We're actually paying more than we think we are. So, but anyway, that's just my thoughts. Anybody else have any?
I agree. I just want to confirm that.
I don't, yeah.
I don't want to leave the library hanging. It's a vital part of the community. It helps raise our children, giving our children a place to go and read and have activities. And I think it's extremely important. They provide a great service to the community.
If I could mention one thing, though, about that. If you take all of the funds that the cities collectively are contributing towards the library, you're looking at about maybe $100,000 total. And you're spreading that across less than 100,000 residents out of 300,000. If the library's budget really needs that $100,000 to support its operations, why shouldn't it be covered by all 300,000 residents in Cherokee County? They all have access to the libraries. And as a city, we provide additional services to the library as city residents that county residents don't provide. We pave the road that goes to it. We keep that road clean. We keep the right-of-way clean right there around it. That's not a cost that an unincorporated resident's paying because we're paying for it out of city taxes. So I think sometimes we get devalued in some of the contributions we make to county facilities that are in the city limits. As city residents, we're paying for those upkeep and maintenance items that the unincorporated residents may not be paying for. But if council wants to put it in there, we'll be happy to list it in as a line item.
Ms. Wilson?
This is not about the library.
Okay, whatever.
If y'all want to talk some more about the library, I'll wait.
I'm through.
Okay. This morning, Mr. Weaver raised the concern about having some safe place for handguns in the municipal court. And we learned this morning that there are funds in a budget, in a part of the budget, that can be earmarked for that. We also learned that people who come to municipal court cannot bring their purses into the court.
That's correct.
So I would like for us to go ahead and make sure that we earmark the funds that are in the budget for discretionary items, that one of those, that some of those funds, whatever it takes to build the handgun and purse storage for municipal court, I'd like to see us do that. I think it's, since I learned a little bit more about it, I think it's really something that we need. I understand that the judge is in favor of it. So I think it would help the public, particularly folks that need a place to put their pocketbooks.
Yes, ma'am.
So everybody's not going to have a handgun, but most of the ladies will have a pocketbook.
I didn't realize they could not bring a pocketbook into theirs. I bet there's a lot of people turning around and going back to their car, you know? It seems like it.
Well, I think the judge's comment was, particularly if it's raining, first of all, people aren't happy to be at court. And when you send them back out in the rain, they're really not happy to be there. So it would be a convenience item.
So is that something we have to vote on, or is it something that will be automatically?
No, you don't have to vote on it. And I have expressed to Mr. Weaver, in my opinion, as long as the judge was okay with it, the police chief's okay with it from a security standpoint, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't do it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Mr. Grant.
Well, as promised, I saved a couple of questions for tonight, but hopefully it'll be short. But on the general government buildings, I know we're combining the funds of the former police station and all, and I assume that accounts for the doubling on communications, electricity, and supplies and materials. Section 3, page 13, communications, it's 56,000 to 125,000. And the total for general government buildings, 220,000, 666,000 approximately. Is that because of the combining of those funds, or is that something else?
On general government buildings under communications or the total budget?
Communications.
So what you'll see in 2019 is the budget for communications of $56,000. That is basically telecom for City Hall. And so when we roll in the police department, that gets us to that $125,000. So that's communications for this facility and communications for that facility.
Okay. Same on electricity, I assume.
That's correct.
So that explains the total of 220 to 666.
That's correct.
Okay.
The biggest jump in that particular item is under capital outlay buildings, which is $200,000, and that is some minor renovation that we have.
For the windows.
Correct.
Which we may possibly get a grant to assist with.
That's correct.
Okay. And then on the water supply, section 5, page 5, contingencies, $18,750. Is that for something specific, or because we haven't had a contingency fund in that area before?
In the past, at the reservoir, we've line itemed everything out. And this year, what we did is we left a little bit of money in contingency at the reservoir instead of allocating it to specific lines, so that, occasionally we'll have an item come in. Electricity might go up, and we have not used it in the past because we've not had to do a lot of pumping there. So instead of showing it in the line item of electricity, we've added those funds into contingency.
Okay. I just hadn't seen it before, so that's why
Yes, sir.
I was asking. So thank you. That's all.
Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. Would you break down again for me how hotel taxes are used?
That's correct. So we collect an 8% tax
8%?
on lodging in the city for every night of lodging for the first 30 days of stay. That's under state law. Of that, if you think of that 8% making up one big pie, 37.5% of those funds are non-restricted, which means the city can do anything with those funds by law. 25%, or a quarter of the pie, has to be spent on tourism and marketing. Generally, we spend those through Canton Tourism or our Main Street program on events and activities. 18.75% of the pie goes toward tourism product development or bricks and mortar related items. We have traditionally used those dollars for capital projects at the theater. We have used them for wayfinding signage before. We used them for signage on the bridge at Etowah River Park. We funded the sign on the bridge out of those hotel taxes that had. The remaining 18.75% has to be spent through a destination marketing organization, which the state of Georgia defines as an organization that has 501c6 nonprofit status with the IRS. Those funds have to be spent on tourism or marketing. The city has three options to spend those funds with 501c6s. One is the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce, which we pay, I believe, $2,500 a year to for marketing. One is Canton Tourism, which for those who may not know, Canton Tourism is the group that handles things like our concert series, the fireworks at the 4th of July. Those are their activities, along with marketing and other things. And the third is our Main Street program.
Okay. Can you do the same thing for me for car rental tax?
Rental car tax is a little bit different. The state law has about 6 categories that you can spend those funds. I don't have all of them memorized, but off the top of my head, Downtown Development Authority can be a recipient. Public safety can be a recipient. Certain types of infrastructure, like a parking facility, can be a recipient of those funds. Some of it can be used for marketing. Mr. Ingram will pull up that law real quick. But there's a line item of about 7 categories that you can spend those funds through. Economic development is one of those.
And isn't there something that we've designated for this fiscal budget for the majority of our rental car tax to go to?
A portion of our rental car tax is earmarked for our intergovernmental agreement with the Cherokee County Office of Economic Development. We fund them $20,000 a year, and then we give them an additional $4,000 a year for a countywide GIS development. So that's under rental car tax. Last year was the first year we moved the library under rental car tax because it is one of the areas that you can spend funds on.
What is the projected amount to for our revenue from car tax?
Give me just a second. I believe it's about $95,000. And it is collected. It is a 3% tax on the total bill of the rental car. And then there's some exclusions in there. It's not charged on renting a U-Haul, for instance. It's also not charged on renting a multi-passenger bus van.
I know the answer to this, but some citizens have been concerned, so if we can get this answer on public record, it would be great. We've removed the cemetery as a line item from the budget, and I've reassured people who've asked me about that Public Works will continue to do the maintenance on the cemetery as before. It just will not hold a line item. Can you expound on that a little bit, please?
So several years ago, the city created a cemetery fund. The idea with that fund was that as the city sold plots in the cemetery, that the receipts from those plots would go into that fund, and that fund would be used for projects specific to the cemetery. To set up the fund, the city moved money from the general fund in there to help pay for projects. So the selling of plots never paid for the projects out at the cemetery. It becomes kind of an accounting issue every year to have a fund that you're having to do separate accounting for that has less than $7,000 of total work. In the last couple of years, we haven't spent any money in the cemetery fund. So the staff decision, based on the way we handle our budgets, was we would just absorb that into the general fund as a function. Public Works has always cut the grass out there. We've never billed the cemetery fund for the work that we do out there. It's just been paid for out of the general fund. Maintenance will continue as it always has. If we should sell a plot out there, it'll just be reflected as revenue in the general fund.
Thank you for making that public.
Okay. Anyone else have a question, comments?
I have a comment. I actually have 3 points I wanted to make about the budget. I know we won't be voting on the budget until the end of August, but I wanted to make 3 comments. The first one is to thank our staff for bringing this budget to us, which the millage rate, as I understand from this morning, millage rate for Canton, Georgia is the lowest millage rate in the county of any city, correct?
That's correct.
And the only people who will experience any kind of tax increase will be whose property is assessed by the county tax assessor as being more than it was last year.
That's correct.
So if your property did not increase in value, there'll be no tax increase. So that's the point I wanted to make. It really makes sense to me that, and I am very excited that Canton is able to run the city as well as we do without increasing the millage rate.
Yes,
from
ma'am.
last year.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we will end that portion of the meeting and move along to our regular council meeting. And welcome everyone who is here tonight. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your interest in your city government. You have in your agenda package here the minutes from the special call council meeting June 17th, as well as the council meeting minutes of June 20th. Are there any changes, corrections, or anything to be made to those?
Motion to approve. Second.
Mr. Goodwin made the motion to approve. Mr. Young seconded that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. You also have in your agenda the financial statements for the month of May. Are there any questions or comments related to that? Mr. Ingram's here to answer any questions you have, okay? If not, they require no action since they are for informational purposes only. Our 10-minute public input period, we have one individual, Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for recognizing me to speak on second occasion. I'll be exceedingly very brief. As many of you may recall and comment that I've submitted throughout the year, and as I trust you are aware, Governor Nathan Deal pinned his ratification to House Bill 217, being Public Act 25 of 2019, governing syringes. You may recall I had shared with you that at one point I had submitted a Chapter 511 Georgia Administrative Code petition to the Department of Public Health under subsection 3, paragraph C of that newly created amended code section to ask them to initiate rulemaking amendments based on their authority to do so, based on the legislature's decision to regulate the syringe service providers. And I am pleased to report, although there was one or two smaller things in the letter, but I'm pleased to report that I have received a letter from Ms. Miller in her capacity as General Counsel from the Department of Public Health on behalf of the state, saying that my considerations have been forwarded for drafting and that the department will soon release their press release and go through the Georgia Administrative Procedures Act for purposes of hopefully incorporating what I have asked for. So again, that's something that I've been working on for the past year, and I'm grateful that that will hopefully put to an end once and for all the idea of syringes being handed out of churches. Now, what I will say is I'm very acutely and sincerely aware of and am concerned deeply about any individual who finds themselves in a bad situation, and that's never the way to go. But at the same time, I don't want that service to be happening out of any churches. I just, from a cultural and societal standpoint, just the weft and weave of the community and the societal fabric upon which I was raised, and many of you, I would imagine, were raised. You just didn't go to church to get that service there. So hopefully the Department of Public Health will accede to that, and if so, I will be very grateful. But I wanted to share with you that I did, in fact, receive that letter, and hopefully I'll learn more here in the coming weeks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Under old business, the discussion and possible action on revised intergovernmental agreement with the Downtown Development Authority to solicit requests for proposals for the purchase or lease of the Jones Building located at 130 East Main Street. This is, I have looked at that, and you included exactly what we had talked about at the last meeting. If you want to expound on it at all.
Well, there were just the two areas that we had
Yes.
talked about that I highlighted, the changes that I had made. Otherwise, it's the same as you considered last time.
Motion to approve? Second.
Mr. Grant made the motion, and Mr. Yon seconded that motion to approve. Any other discussion?
I would just note that the Downtown Development Authority had their board meeting this morning, and I went ahead and went over the process with them and told them that we would be likely entertaining an approval on this tonight, and they're going to have a special called meeting at the earliest convenience to ratify the agreement and then move forward with the proposal process.
Good. Good. Okay. Anyone else? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. All right, item B, discussion and possible action of the Planning Commission recommendation for case CUP 1904-001, conditional use approval for the townhomes located along Great Sky Parkway and Reservoir Drive, Great Sky Pod 18. Mr.
Yes,
Pack.
sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. This item was discussed at the last city council meeting. There was a good bit of discussion at the last city council meeting in regards to this proposal and application. City council requested staff follow up with the city council members in regards to suggested or proposed conditions of approval for the conditional use permit application. You do have a copy of a resolution that includes the conditions that staff put together based upon discussions with council members since the last meeting. Number one, Pod 18 limited to a maximum of 92 townhomes, no other residential commercial structures. Number two, provide solid opaque visual screen of shrubs and trees, mixture of evergreen and hardwood at a height of 8 feet at planting along Great Sky Parkway, Reservoir Drive. Plant materials shall not include nandina, Bradford pear, or cedar species. Provide a 6-foot wooden privacy fence along the rear of the property that is adjacent to Great Sky Parkway, Reservoir Drive. Number four, provide sidewalk along Great Sky Parkway, Reservoir Drive. Number five, development provide 2 ingress, egress locations, one Great Sky Parkway, one Reservoir Drive with appropriate sight distance. Number six, provide trail connection into Pod 18. I also provided a paper copy of an attachment in an email that the council members received this afternoon from Park South, the attorney representing the applicant, in which they've requested council consider some language changes relative to condition number 2 and condition number 3. They would request that council consider language on condition number 2, provide a landscape plan or planning plan along Great Sky Parkway, Reservoir Drive that is designed to provide an opaque visual screen of the homes that are visible from the roadways. The landscape plan shall be designed by a professional landscape architect or arborist with a mixture of bushes, shrubbery, hardwoods, evergreens, with the final landscape plan to be approved by City Council. The plan shall not include nandina, Bradford pears, or cedar species. They have requested consideration to amend condition number 3 language to read, where needed to create a visual separation from Great Sky Parkway or Reservoir Drive, a 6-foot-tall privacy fence shall be required behind homes that back up to those streets. I'm here to answer any questions council members might have.
Anyone have any questions on this? Ms. McGrew?
Mr. Patton, how do you feel about these compromises?
I don't have a problem with them. City council doesn't.
Okay, who would determine the need for the privacy fence?
I think it would probably be left up to staff and/or city council.
All right.
Now, what they're asking for in here was that would be determined by the landscape architect or someone else, right?
That was as to the buffer. The question was about the fencing.
Oh, okay.
And the fence the fence would only be required where necessary to create the visual opaqueness. So it's a sort of a factual question. And if there was any dispute, it would come to council.
Oh, okay. Mr. Grant?
I'm a little confused by that because it's the buffer, the planning said it would be their compromise where homes that would be seen from the street, but this 6-foot fence would only be used where homes would be seen from the street. But if you had plantings where homes would be seen from the street, you wouldn't need the fence then. Is that correct? Is that
Basically,
explain that to me?
I would tend to think that the possibility of fencing probably might be required adjacent to the entrances and any residential lots or structures that could be seen that are in close proximity to the entrances along Great Sky Parkway or Reservoir Drive. Otherwise, the landscaping should be sufficient to shield the structures from the view shed from Great Sky Parkway, Reservoir Drive.
Okay.
But there is a possibility of a few spots, like I said, close to the entrances that landscaping might not necessarily completely shield some of the homes.
Mm-hmm. And then I have a problem with leaving the landscape up to their landscape designer, although I don't have a problem with the landscape architect being involved, but also just my understanding of that was to kind of create a buffer along the whole parkway to replace the trees that are there to match the other side. What I'm understanding this compromise would be only where the homes would be possibly be seen.
They would prepare a plan. Staff would bring it back to City Council for your approval. Staff, if asked, would give their opinion if it meets the solid screening that has been talked about.
Yeah, I would prefer having the solid screening along the entire parkway, but to me it seems like we're going to be going back and forth there a lot. So, but that was my understanding that was to ensure that buffer and to try to match the other side, because I know at one point we had talked about working with staff to try to recreate some of the look of the other side of the natural buffer, but I believe that was the intent of that.
So what the difference could be, and maybe some language you could add, that there's still a requirement of landscaping.
Yes.
It's a question of whether it's going to be opaque or not. So areas where the homes are not visible, there's still going to be trees as part of a landscape plan. They just don't have to be opaque.
Are they going to be the existing trees, or are they going to take all the trees down and put up new ones where they
I suspect it's going to be a combination of some of the existing trees that are on the site now in combination with supplemental planting is what I suspect is going to happen.
Didn't it say in the letter there that if they planted trees big enough to be opaque, within a number of years they would be so large they'd be dead, they'd die?
There was that statement in the attorney's letter. Personally, I disagree with that statement for the simple fact that it's not going to be a single line or row of plant materials. You generally have multiple rows of plant materials, and they're staggered, if you will, so that the trees that are planted within a row have enough room that they can grow to maturity and fullness, and you have a second row that would fill in any gaps, if you will, that sort of thing.
Are we talking about an opaque planting in the beginning, or an opaque planting that would occur after a number of years when they grew to a certain level?
What was discussed with City Council and what City Council had kind of through telephone conversations emailed back was that it would be a solid opaque screen at planting. But if City Council wanted to allow for that growth in filling over a period of time, you could certainly do that.
No, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just trying to get clarification of what that said, because I wasn't really sure if to start with, you know, if everything was really visible and it shouldn't be, then you know, we get a lot of complaints about it probably. But you know, if it's opaque from the beginning, then you know, that ought to take care of that, I would think.
It's my understanding also the 8-foot tall was, instead of, you know, specifying diameters of trees and all, was to kind of ensure that, and I don't see the 8-foot tall in the compromise.
That was taken out of what the applicant requested council consider. What council had indicated to staff was that it would be solid opaque at planting in a minimum 8 foot in height.
I still prefer that.
Ms. McGrew?
Thank you for disagreeing with the sentence about the plant material in 5 years, because we know that if plant material is installed properly, it lives. And if it's taken care of, it lives. Also, all of nature would be dead in that case because they're opaque forests. So I found that one to be interesting. What is the city's stance on clear-cutting lots for construction?
Individual lots, the city doesn't have any guidelines in place relative to clear cutting an individual lot. There are requirements that the site, prior to any land disturbance activity, does have to do a tree survey, a tree count, and they have to come up with a recompense of trees taken out, part of that tree count and the land disturbing activity. And it isn't so much a tree for tree recompense, it's based upon tree units. Mm-hmm. They would be required to recompense for the amount of trees that are taken out based upon a tree count and tree survey, and then provide recompensation either through payment into a tree fund or planting onto that site.
Okay. And I believe when we talked about this at the last meeting, you said that a staff member could attend this tree inventory.
Yes.
I'd like that very much.
If they take out a 10-inch diameter oak, how many trees do they have to plant to make up for that? 5 2-inch or what?
The recompense trees generally are minimum 3-inch diameter trees, and I don't recall all the specifics of the recompense and how the tree units are calculated.
Okay.
I don't deal with it on a daily basis. I might could look it up and tell you right quick.
That's all right.
In discussions with the designer on this one, between staff and the designer, they've got quite a few tree units that would have to be replaced. Probably more than could be planted on the site and survive. Okay. From an email that I remember back and forth between staff.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
The buffer, the stream, and the water's edge, will staff mark that off?
They generally are required to put up some kind of tree save material or something denoting, no land disturbance, no removal of trees, that sort of thing. If they do get into it, staff shuts them down, and we go through a whole nother recompense and replanting of trees. An example I can give you of a situation like that occurred many years ago when I worked with the city of Alpharetta, in which there was a buffer on what is now the Harry's Farmers Market site. The developer actually clear-cut the full extent of the buffer adjacent to the city of Roswell. Ended up costing them over $800,000 to replant that buffer strip. They had to go up into Indiana to get 30-foot tall tulip poplars to replace as a part of that recompense.
After the barriers are erected, the silt fence, I imagine, is what it would be like. Who goes and inspects to make sure it's the proper distance?
City staff,
And
development services.
does the builder notify you that it's done and it needs an inspection?
Generally, a lot of that is put up, part of it's put up prior to any land disturbing activities.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I wanted to talk just a little bit about the two entrance and exits. And it's not required for a development of only 92. It's up to, you have to have two if there's as many as 125.
Yes, ma'am.
So is it the staff's opinion that two egress, ingress areas are necessary? And if they are not, but that is one of the conditions, tell me how it's going to be worked out that they'll be safe.
If that condition were to stay in City Council moves forward with approval of the conditional use permit with that condition, it will have to meet all of the city's regulations and guidelines in regards to site distance and things of that nature. That condition was included because some of the council members in discussions back with staff specifically requested that as a condition of approval for council consideration.
Right. And I just want to be sure that whatever is put in will be safe, because that was part of the problem that we've had with some of the areas over there now. So the staff will be looking to make sure that wherever they are located will be safe site distance and that
Yes,
sort of
ma'am.
Then
They
I
have
one,
to be. They won't get a land disturbance permit without it.
Okay. Then I have one other question that doesn't have anything to do with the conditions, but it was brought up, I think, whenever the first public hearing we had here by the attorney, whenever someone was talking about the expense to redo the amenities, the clubhouse, and I believe the attorney said that the current homeowners and the future homeowners would not be paying off that debt.
It shows in the budget, but it had been indicated that that has not been added into the assessment fee that the current residents pay. I can't answer as to whether that might be added in at some time in the future.
And amortized over a period of years? You don't know?
Could be, like I said, the current developer, when they purchased this out of foreclosure, there was an existing line item in the HOA budget that reflected some of the same kinds of things and all that they took off the books that were not assessed. But they have made improvements with the amenity center and some other things. It does show on the books. Our finance chairman, Mike, could explain to you why that's showing that sort of thing, but they have sort of indicated that they probably will not assess that, but I can't guarantee that.
But I think I heard Mr. Huff say that they were not going to assess that.
Mr. City Attorney, can we hear from, no, what I'm going to ask you is, can we hear from the developer at this point?
There's no, the public hearings have all been closed, and that's a problem
Right.
to allow people to talk, because then nobody else gets to respond.
I think we would need to address that question to
To Nathan.
Nathan or Ken, and you want to turn around and ask anybody, I guess that's all right, you know.
You know, and, you know, your question, concern relative to the HOA budget and that sort of thing, is it really the purview of city council?
Right. It is.
I don't think you can make a condition about that at all.
Right, and I wasn't planning to make a condition about that. I just wanted to reiterate that I thought I had heard that would not be assessed on current or future residents.
And I believe that statement was made.
Okay, that's what.
Anyone else? Mr. Grant?
I understand the compromise on the fence, and I'm okay with that. That makes sense to me. But I think going back to the solid planning 8-foot buffer, to me, that was as much, or maybe even more so, about maintaining the integrity of Great Sky Parkway and the other side, as much as, you know, hiding or concealing the townhomes, which I think this would be a nice product. But I think that was, you know, one of the primary reasons for that condition. So I would like to actually, again, I would prefer to see that one stay in. I'm okay with the fence one, so.
Mr. McGrew?
Are we expected to approve this project, leaving the number of ingress, egress up to staff?
No. Not in my opinion.
With the proposed conditions, 2 is required,
The 2 is specified.
specified, right?
Okay.
With the proposed conditions, you can
Yeah.
change that.
All right, so let's say that it's determined that there is no safe way to get that second ingress, egress.
Then it could not be
reservoir.
done.
I'm sorry,
Then it could not be done.
the whole project?
No,
Just
no,
they'd come back
the
and
entrance.
they'd come back and say, we can't do 2, and you'd have to change the condition.
Okay, so it would come back before us,
See, we don't specify in here where it's going to be.
right?
We specify that it needs to be safe. If it can't be safe, you know, I can't do it.
So if two are not safe, then the staff would determine that only one would be safe, right? Even though the conditions say
Yeah,
it would be two.
that is, but, you know, it's been my understanding and from the site plan and plat and all that there's way enough adequate distance to create a safe entrance based on the speed limit and the site distance that would be there. But that's something the staff would make a determination. That's code. I mean, they have to meet
Right,
code
but
on that.
could we condition it in that way, and rather than the condition that there be 2? Could we condition it that there should be 2? We feel like there should be 2 if they are safe, but if they are not, we would rely on staff to make safe, only one safe entrance and exit.
Well, we could, but we sort of do that anyway, I think.
I mean, it says with appropriate site distance.
Yeah.
I would kind of interpret that to mean what you just said.
Okay,
basically what
so
you
the
said.
meaning is there anyway.
I think so,
Okay.
because if it's not appropriate site distance, then they can't do it. So-
No, but
Right.
with the condition of 2 entrances, they would probably have to come back to city
Right.
council to amend the condition.
So maybe we could just say, provided that both have appropriate site distances.
Or safe,
But you know-
appropriate and safe, right.
Would you say you can have an entrance provided it's safe?
Well, no, you can have 2.
I mean, we couldn't do it if it
Well,
wasn't safe, could you?
actually, I think I would suggest you just leave it alone, and it's got to come back to you. If there's any question, it'll just come back to city
Okay.
council.
Okay.
I think we just leave it at that. Because we'll get into too many what-ifs.
Getting off, yeah, I'll understand.
Well, I can compromise on the fencing, but not on the buffer.
Okay.
One thing I would ask on the buffer is, do you like the part about a plan being submitted to you for approval, as they put in their letter?
Most definitely.
Because that's not normally what would happen. So we could adopt their language about the plan being submitted and approval by city council, but still require that it be opaque through the length of the roadways.
And 8 feet.
And 8 feet. Right.
You know, I don't know if I'd know what I was seeing, actually,
You do.
to be honest with you.
You'd have to have explanation from somebody.
Yeah, because there's a,
You'd have to have approval at some point.
Well, I think the staff would have to explain what you're looking at, but plans, because the plans don't always have visuals, but
but that, that's fine with me. That'd be fine if you want to bring it back. But
I was actually studying that before the car wreck.
anybody else? Okay. Are you satisfied with all the conditions with the exception of the one with the planning? And if it could be worded as our city attorney had indicated, that it would be acceptable.
so let's clarify that for the record then. So what I understand is that you are accepting of the change that the applicant has proposed for item 3 as to the fence.
Yes.
So we would be adopting the applicant's verbiage on item 3, and that item 2, you would still have what's proposed by the staff as to the 8 feet, but we would adopt the sentence that the applicant proposed about the plan shall be designed by a professional landscape architect or arborist with a mixture of bushes, hardwoods, and evergreens, with the final plan to be approved by city council. We would add that sentence to condition number 2 in the resolution.
Good.
And they talk about bushes. Would that shrubbery be deciduous or evergreen? Or a mixture?
You would approve that. Ultimately, it's your approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, we put in Leland cypress, it'll be opaque.
Time's a wasting.
I make a motion, we approve the project with the conditions as outlined.
Second the motion.
Ms. Wilson made the motion. Mr. Goodman seconded that motion. Is there any other discussion?
That was with the amendments as specified by the attorney.
Yes.
That's what you meant, Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, that's what
Yes,
What I recited.
yes.
Uh-huh. Any other discussion, questions, comments? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Okay. Under new business, discussion of the road closures and for the downtown events. You handling that one? Okay.
Mr. Dodson's at the State Public Works Conference, so I told him he didn't need to drive back for this. We have 2 events in October. October 12th is Zombie Fest, and October 26th is Barbecue Brews and Booze. Those are private events, and so that's the reason why those street closures come before you. We've had the events before in the past, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on those.
Any questions? Okay. Next item. Discussion of the budget amendment to purchase building inspector vehicle. We've talked about that several times, I think. Nathan, you want to comment on it? If anybody has any questions, we'll let them ask.
We're increasing charges for service and building and safety services by $26,000 increase in capital outlay. So, Mr. Peppers mentioned this last meeting. This is a truck that we're getting particularly good pricing on before the new year rolls out, so we wanted to take pretty quick action on this.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of truck is it?
Is a Ford F-150.
Why so big?
Pardon?
What is this truck going to be used for?
Building and safety services for the new buildings inspector.
So it does site inspections. Normally we get 4-wheel drive because it's going on terrain where roads are not currently constructed. As we're developing pods, they drive up into the pods. And
When are we going to go green and start using electric vehicles?
when they develop a 4x4 electric vehicle that we can climb the hills on, building inspection might do it. If this were going to be brought up as a meter reading truck, we would be doing something much smaller and something more economical. But given the fact that it's being used for site development, there are some safety things we have to think about from the employee standpoint.
And I might add that this is a 2019. This is kind of the end of the run. If we don't purchase or we didn't purchase that one, we'd have to wait till the 2020s come out, which I think it was New Year. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, let me remind everyone that these items for discussion will be acted on the 25th. Okay, that's our fourth Thursday this time, so it'll be 2 weeks from now, not next week. All right, discussion of the slope easement and agreement with Legends of Laurel Canyon. Bethany?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Legends at Laurel Canyon is currently building about 18 walls, and 2 of those walls actually impact the city property that's located at 70 Laurel Canyon Village Circle, which is the property that's adjacent to the Publix that at one time we were going to put a fire station up there. So the walls are actually going to impact the city property by about 10 feet. Build the walls, you have to put like geogrid, and the geogrid's going to be on the city property. And so Legends needs an easement agreement from the city in order to build those walls. And this is for the second entrance that's coming from the Publix. You know, when you're going into, going past the Publix, there is that straight, it almost goes straight into just a undeveloped area. That's where those walls will be.
This is the second entrance for
The Legends at Laurel Canyon, it's the apartment complex up 140.
And there's 2 walls on that parcel.
So we have a wall that we built between our lot and the lot that's next to Crest at Laurel Canyon. If you recall where we were grading, we installed a wall. Basically, they're having to install a smaller wall because that entire property goes downhill towards State Route 140. And so they're just shoring up their section of roadway between the road and our property with this wall.
But 10 feet of the
property. So basically, they'll build the wall will be on their property. But in order to build the wall, they need to be able to use the city property. And to be able to maintain that wall, they need to be able to get up on the city property to make sure that that slope looks nice for the apartment complex.
Maybe explain what GeoGrid is.
Okay, so when you build a wall, if it's, say it's, I'm just going to use CMUs as an example, and you put the first layer down, you'll have a geogrid that goes back maybe 5 to 10 feet. It really depends on how tall the wall is. And then you put another layer of CMUs and you'd have another geogrid. And then, so it's basically keeping the wall stable.
And so if anybody ever built anything on the city's site, that would be within a setback lot area anyway, that 10 feet.
Correct.
Yeah, that's my next question. Would it prohibit us from selling or decrease the value of the property?
No.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you. Discussion of the master sign plan, phase 1 for the mill at Etowah.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council members. The mill on Etowah has submitted a master sign plan for city council approval. It is phase 1 that deals with the building that is Reformation Brewery as well as the old Canton mill itself. The master plan did go to the Historic Preservation Commission, in which they approved the details, colors, things of that nature relative to this overall master sign plan submittal. Within the master sign plan, it provides information relative to the amount of signage for each tenant. There are 6 types of signs. That would be a maximum of 1 square foot per tenant frontage within the building, maximum of 24 square feet. More than the 24 square feet would require approval from the owner of the building. The length of the Canton mill itself with this 1 square foot per 1 lineal foot of building frontage would provide an opportunity for over 900 square feet of signage. It's quite a large building. That 1 square foot per lineal footage is consistent with what our sign regulations specify in other districts within our downtown area and within our design guidelines for historic district. It talks about a maximum of 75 square feet per tenant. That is what was approved for Academy in Maine. This potentially could go beyond that 75 square feet. I sort of doubt that it will, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Phase 2 will come back with some of the other buildings.
Should we not have a standard for that type thing that doesn't need to come to us? I mean, is there not a number of square feet footage, or depending on the number of tenants or something that, that you have a formula to apply this to? Looks to me like. I don't understand exactly why every time we have a development like that, it's got to come here for a sign.
If you don't want it to come to city council, you can instruct staff to advertise, and we can amend the Unified Development Regulations in which the master sign plan would be approved through staff.
Well, I don't know necessarily that I would want to do that, but there ought to be a formula out there some way that you don't have to use judgment about every time you have a development like that. Well, we'll let you have this, we'll let you have that. No, you can't have this, that one can have this. It looks like there needs to be some standardization there to me, and it may not be possible. I don't know. It just seems like if you got a sign ordinance, you should be able to apply it uniformly some way. Maybe not.
With these larger master plan developments, similar to Canton Place, Northside Hospital with their master sign plan, the size and bulk of the buildings, if it stayed within some of our regular sign regulation guidelines, some folks might not be able to see the numbers on the buildings when they go into the medical campus. That is part of the reason for having this relative to a master sign plan.
But you can't see that from the plan that they present? You can't see what the need would be based on the site plan that they submit?
Signage and site plans, two different things.
Right.
That's part of the reason in plan development.
Well, I understand, but you got to know what they're going to be building, surely.
One of the issues, the reason you have a master plan is because the roads are often private. And so I get asked questions, our ordinance says this, does it apply to a private road or not? And the answer is no. You can have a road, you can have a sign on a road, but not on a private road. So that's the idea, is they're coming in with signage. You would have to change the ordinance to say within a master plan, this is, if you do these things, don't have to come to council. It's just easier to bring them to council.
So for instance, this project, the address is Railroad Street, but the actual front of the facility is the river. And so, that's one of the reasons why the developer has said, we would rather go the route of the master sign plan so that we can show you what it is we want to do and how that would fit with your traditional sign plan, but isn't currently allowed because it's on a private street and not on a public street.
Well, that's fine. I mean, it ain't a big deal, really. I mean, I'm not going to make a big deal of that, but it seems like there's just a lot of judgment involved in this that somehow or another, a lot of that needs to be sort of taken out of it, but okay. Anybody have any comments, questions on that?
Just one quick question. Mr. Patton, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the 75 square feet, did we not approve slightly over that for Panera for the extra sign?
For
Academy in Maine?
No, Academy in Maine
the extra
City
sign on the back,
Council, the applicant proposed a maximum of 75 square feet per tenant within their master sign plan. City Council approved that square footage for each tenant. City Council approved numerous freestanding signs, approved the location of the wall signs, how they were going to look and that sort of thing.
Right.
And the applicant felt that 75 square feet per tenant was sufficient.
Right. I just recall we did that, and then they came back when they wanted to add the sign on the back, and it was exceeded the 75 square feet.
I think you're right.
That's
We
cor-
did
that is
add something
correct.
out there.
Okay. That's all.
Anyone else? Okay, while we're talking about signs, might mention, I know recently the Board of Appeals approved, as I understand, the increase at a request from down Highway 20 there, from the sign regs were for 32 square feet. The request was to expand that to 60 square feet, and I understand it was approved. Are you familiar with this?
Well, in actuality, the monument sign and the property was located on Knoxbridge Highway, State Route 20. That is one of the corridors of influence that is contained within the city's community overlay standards. Within the Appendix D for signage within the corridor of influence for a shopping center up to 100,000 square feet, they could be allowed 48 square feet of copy area. The Board of Zoning Appeals did approve a variance for that monument sign to go to 60 square feet.
Okay. So what does that do, in your opinion, to the next application? Did that set a precedence, or is it likely you can deny the next one that comes along in that area? Or have we really established another rule and need to look at our code and maybe amend it to reflect that?
It definitely sets precedent. Staff did bring to the attention of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and there was discussion at the meeting that this does set precedent. Staff did ask the Board of Zoning Appeals to look into this, and we've asked them to get back with us in regards to the potential to amend some of the standards within that community overlay district, specifically with the Appendix D and signage, because for the multiple tenant shopping center portion of those regulations, there's a column in that table that limits the number of tenants that staff is of the opinion should be deleted, because it limits 100,000 square foot of retail space in a multi-tenant center to 4 tenants. And
If I
Makes no sense.
So the Board of Zoning Appeals, in theory, are deciding that that particular property needs the variance. So we would hope that it wouldn't be a precedent, because the next situation would be judged by its own merits. Now, that's theoretical. So the next guy's going to argue, hey, he got it, and if we don't have a good reason to explain why they got it, and they can't, we'd have a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
staff plans to bring
Supposed
this
to be
up to
case
the
by
planning
case.
commission as well.
Oh, what'd you say again?
The staff plans to bring this up to the
Okay,
planning
good.
commission as well. Unified Development Code specifies that those ordinance amendments can be initiated either by city council or by the planning commission. You instruct staff to put something together. We're going to be looking at it anyway, but like I said, we have discussed that.
Well, I think we're probably going to personally, I think we're going to have to look at it now for sure. Maybe we wouldn't have before, but I think we will now.
I guess there's not as many now. There's been a lot of sign size variances, which to me tells me that we ought to look at the ordinance and say, if this group of people thinks our ordinance is not lenient enough or allows them, we should change the ordinance. There shouldn't be that many variances.
Absolutely. That's why I say we do need to look at that.
On the flip side of that statement, any retail business is going to tell you they never can have enough signage.
It's never big enough. And so at some point, the Board of Appeals should start denying them, but they have not seen fit to do that much. So.
Okay. You answered my question, and thank you. Let's see. The next item, discussion of the fee waiver application submitted by Meritage Homes for Lot 2511 501 Appalachian Place to provide home to military veteran family, part of Operation Homefront. This is, in fact, went to a ribbon cutting up there a few days, a week or so ago, and they're asking if the city would essentially give some relief on some of the fees. I don't think there would be any consideration for impact fees, certainly, but maybe for a water tap or certain fees there. Anybody have any thoughts on that? As to what, if anything, you would entertain doing? I think it's obviously a very worthy cause, what they're going to do. They're building a house there up in Town Mill.
Yes, sir.
And that house is going to be given to a veteran and his family. I mean, it's outright gift now.
It's part of Operation Homefront program that Meritage takes part in. It's a kind of a nationwide program.
Yeah.
They are requesting a refund. Basically, the application specifies $5,567.98.
Please repeat
Of
that
that,
number.
$46.25 would be water sewer tap fees. No, that would be sewer tap because water is provided by the Water Authority in Town Mill. And the building permit fee, their application shows $942.98. Staff, when we calculated the building permit fee, it was $945.40. So if City Council were to approve this fee waiver application, the total amount would be $5,570.40.
Now, let me say this.
Someone from Meritage, I think, is here.
Yeah.
If
I think,
you have any questions for them.
Yeah, I think that, we could, technically, you could do that or do any part of that, I would think, if you want to do, or do nothing, of course.
Sounds like a nationwide program, and it sounds like a wonderful
it's
program.
a very worthy cause, from what I can understand, for sure.
I don't have a problem with it.
What do other cities do? Do they forgive all of the amount or a portion of the amount, or is it a mixed bag of tricks that different cities forgive different parts?
My guess is it's been a mix of stuff. Have other cities helped out along the way, or do you know?
Generally, like I said, most communities that I'm aware of have either refunded fees that were already paid because they felt that it's a very worthwhile cause. Meritage is proposing to, if you will, turn deed and title over to a veteran and his family for this home at no cost. And, Lucas is with Meritage, and he can come up and explain a little more to you if you want to hear from him.
Come on up, if you don't mind.
And while he's coming, I would just mention, we have waived fees before for
Sure.
nonprofit uses.
And
The only thing that ever becomes an issue is the impact fee, because under state
Yeah.
law, if we waive that, then we have to fund it from another source, and so.
But they've not asked for the waiver of the impact
That's
fees.
correct, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. We had discussions,
Impact fees
let
are
them
not
know
right.
about impact fee laws and that sort of thing.
And I think we need to recognize that the staff has recommended the waiver.
We support the waiver on this one because we feel it's a very worthwhile cause to help out a veteran and his family. I served in the military, and I don't think veterans get enough credit for things that they've done for all the freedoms that we take for granted every day.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of Meritage Homes. My name is Luke Larson. I'm the Vice President of Purchasing for Meritage, but I'm also a City of Canton resident. And Meritage participates in this program. We are a national home builder. We participate in this program in only one division every year, and we've been fortunate enough to have this opportunity here in Atlanta this year, and I've also had the opportunity to spearhead the project. And so being a City of Canton resident myself, I was excited about the opportunity to hopefully do it here. I can tell you that we've had just amazing participation. Our entire trade base has agreed to donate materials and labor for this cost 100% free of charge. And the developer of Town Mill has actually agreed to donate the lot. And it's pretty phenomenal. So it's absolutely by no means a requirement, but it is something we'd love for the city to have the opportunity to participate in. So we do appreciate your consideration on it.
Do you know what any other cities have done in the past?
So it depends. It's specific to the municipality. So this is going to be our 10th Operation Homefront Home. And kind of like what we're talking about here tonight, there's some legal ramifications around the impact fees where that's required, so that's not part of our request. Typically what we found is anything that the municipality can voluntarily contribute, they have voluntarily contributed. Again, by no means a requirement, but we do appreciate the consideration.
I believe there's been quite a number of other entities that made donations other than just a lot. I don't know, building materials and stuff like that, I would assume.
Yes. We utilize about 40 different trade partners to build our homes, and from those 40 different trade partners, it's about 200 manufacturers, and every single one of them has played 100%. So,
and if we approve the waiver of the fees, then would we be recognized as a partner as well?
You will be recognized as a partner regardless, because it's going to happen in this municipality. It's going to happen in the city of Canton. And this isn't just about giving a home to a veteran and their family. It's about integrating them into a community. So regardless, we're going to ask for your support and assistance with that, but we will definitely be recognizing that as well. Yes.
I think it's thank you, first of all, for doing this. And I think it's certainly relevant what other cities are doing, but I'd like to see us step up and waive all the fees for this. I think it's very worthy. It's one home, one person, but I'd like to see us do that. I know we've done some are partial for other organizations, but I'd love for us to participate in it. I think it's very worthy cause.
Did you make a motion, or are you
That's why it would come up at our next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yeah,
my other question is this
motion would come up then.
Time sensitive is
Right.
something that can wait till the next meeting.
No, sir. It can wait. We've already commenced construction on the home because we want to deliver this home to the veteran and their family right around Veterans Day. So we've already commenced construction. Great. So in this case, I believe it'd be a reimbursement.
It'd be very appropriate, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to be a partner.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Ken.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Goodwin, you want to talk about scooters?
Basically, I brought this up because being in the Atlanta area, seeing a lot of scooters laying all over the sidewalks and people having to step around them, sometimes often tripping over them. And I was just there this past weekend, and they were everywhere. I was down around North Avenue, the Varsity area, and they were just everywhere, littering up the street. Lots of cities are already making this type of movement to not allow those scooters to be had in their communities because it's such a nuisance. And I'd just like to see us follow that same example.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Well, I think if we were to decide to discourage this, that would then people who are bringing in companies that sell the scooters into the city, if they knew that we weren't going to allow them on our streets, that might discourage them from bringing in scooters to be sold.
Couldn't we just deny a business permit if anyone applied?
I don't know about that.
Not unless we pass an ordinance. What cities have done it, it's sort of, the media reports are a little misleading because they say they banned scooters, but what they've actually banned is the dockless rental scooters. So you essentially ban the business. I looked at Athens, Clark County, and Marietta to see exactly how it was accomplished. So you're not banning the scooters, you're banning the business.
Right.
That's true.
So they're banning the business.
So you just prohibit anybody from riding a scooter that was rented, essentially.
Have we been approached by those companies? Am I missing something?
No.
Not yet, but
Yeah.
they're on the way.
Anyone else?
Not
Okay.
on that. But I'd like to give a report when it's convenient.
You want to give a report? Go for it.
Okay. Mrs. Wilson and I did meet about our town hall, considering planning and zoning. We determined that the week of August 19th would be a good week after school has started, but before Labor Day. And please jump in if you remember details
Go
of
right
it.
ahead.
Excuse me. We're coordinating with staff to see who we need to be there and venue. And Mr. Peppers was going to look into a couple of options for venue. And then we will let you know what we come up with. And we, of course, would like for all of the council to be there if at all possible. And what am I leaving out?
I don't think you're leaving out anything that I recall.
Okay.
I
So
think-
we're on it.
All right.
Ward 1 Town Hall in August.
Okay. And you're looking at doing that maybe here, or you know yet?
Maybe at a neutral site.
But not a restaurant, maybe. Maybe it's like a school, if we could have a place in a school. Billy suggested that. I thought that was a good suggestion.
Okay.
We'll bring that information to you as soon as we have it.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Mr. Peppers? You don't have anything? Okay. Well, I have a couple of things I wanted to mention. Of course, it's my intention I am nominating Bill Teasley and Nell Magruder for the couple of slots on the Historic Preservation Commission. And we'll look at that and act on that at the next meeting. Another item before we do an executive session, I wanted to mention. Obviously, November the 5th is going to be some elections and very important elections in this city. We will have three council seats, and the mayor's seat will be up. Qualifying is August, and Billy, you correct me if I'm wrong, August the 19th, 20th, and 21st, beginning at 8:30 a.m. on Monday the 19th until 5 p.m., and from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. on Tuesday, August the 20th, and from 8 a.m. until noon on Wednesday the 21st. That sound right? That's correct. Okay. Qualifying fee for the council seats is $360. Qualifying fee for the office of mayor is $540. And it also appears apparent that there may be another council seat opening up at about that time, and I think if so, this will require a special election to fill that seat. So there most likely is going to be another open council seat. I think it's important that we look to that so that we can, if possible, hold that special council seat election in conjunction with the November 5th general election for the city. Because that would be better, in my opinion, than having to have a special election. The next opportunity would be in March. So we would, if it weren't held in November, it would be, we would have almost 6 months with an open council seat and nobody sitting there. Okay, so one of the wards would be short one. I think the question that we really need to answer, and Mr. Dyer, you probably help me with this. What is the number of days that would be required in order to plan for this, assuming it happens? What would be the number of days required from the call of the election, from the call until, in order to see that it's roughly on the ballot by November 5th?
Our issues are not really with the timing in the statute. We have plenty of time, according to the statutory, but it's the getting the ballots printed. It's the Cherokee County Election Board's deadlines that are causing a compression of time.
Well, I called them. Okay, I called Kim Stansel, and she told me she really wouldn't give me an answer on it. She said that the city had indicated to her that all information regarding the election should come from the city. And I thought that because, we're paying them to operate our elections, we ought to be able to, there ought to be a number there. I mean, she should know, shouldn't she?
Well,
How many days?
Well, and I can tell you the days. I mean, it's the call doesn't have to happen but 30 days before the election. So you could wait until October, according to the law, to call the election.
Does that include, does that give you time to have early voting and all that?
No, that's what. So it's not the deadlines about when we would take action necessarily. Our deadlines for taking action are being driven by these other considerations, meaning the printing of ballots and early voting. That's why they have to print the ballots. I think it's first week of September, which means qualifying ends 21st. You would have to have a meeting to call the election in time to get it advertised so that it's all done, so that people are qualified in time for the printing of the ballots. There's not much room in there. That's the problem. You would have to move quickly. I mean, there's no doubt about that, because you can make qualifying be shortly after the call. There's no real waiting time required in there. But you would have to have the qualifying be the last week of August, basically, or the first few days in September, because you have to give them names to print the ballot. So you'd have to, I think the timing works out, you'd have to do a special call meeting, because the second meeting in August is the 20th, maybe? Is that right? Yeah.
Monday's the 19th.
No, okay.
Well, we could have a special call meeting.
Well, it'll be the
24-hour notice, right?
What?
We could have a
24 hours,
special
yes.
call meeting
Yes.
within 24 hours.
You would have to call the meeting, you'd have to decide to have the meeting on the 22nd.
Yeah.
And then you could have the meeting then,
After qualifying closed.
Correct.
Then we would meet.
because that's when the opening would occur, depending on that. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. So that's, I think when you ask a specific question, it depends. It depends on what happens, and there's a bunch of scenarios. But assuming that the opening doesn't occur until qualifying week, which is legally when it would have to happen, then you would have to move quickly.
Mr. Pepper?
Well, I was just going to say, my understanding is that it's not as much the printing of the ballots, but it's the programming of all of the voting machines that's the issue. Because while they print the ballots in-house, they have a third-party vendor that comes in and programs all the voting machines. And so they basically have to have the electronic ballot prepared further in advance. And that's where the issue on timing is from their standpoint.
Okay.
But, when the law was written about the call of special elections, that was before advanced voting and early voting took place. And so they've never really clarified that in state law to back those times out further.
So technically, there'd be enough time regardless.
Yes.
We just have to move quick and
You
make
have
it
to move
happen.
quick.
Special call
We've
meeting
looked
just
at
for
it.
that
It can happen.
purpose.
Well, I just
But
think
we-
it's important. If we can do that, we could probably end up saving a little bit of money there by not having to do it and not only saving the money, but actually having a council member sitting in that seat a lot sooner than 6 months. Okay. Let's see. Another thing I wanted to talk about was a very tragic incident that occurred at the ice house that was in the news, and everyone I think has seen that on TV, where someone was actually ended up dying from a brawl fight or something. I'm not sure exactly what may have transpired, but I asked for our staff and PD to provide a list of times that they had been called out to that particular facility, a restaurant, if it's a restaurant, over the last 12 months. And it was kind of interesting. I've got here, I think, there's like 26 calls, 26 to one location. And ain't none of them pretty, okay? Everything from, assault, different things too, public indecency, public drunkenness, sexual battery, simple battery, person drunk, battery, accident with the DUI, death investigation, of course. So also, I believe Mr. Peppers, I had asked him to give us an idea of how that compared to other restaurants, because I could not imagine that some of our restaurants downtown here would have 20-something calls to the police department in a year's time, and that's absolutely true. I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said that probably the next highest one was like 5. Is that an accurate statement?
That's
reasonably
pretty close.
so.
That's pretty close. Yeah.
So something's going on here. Something that's not too pretty is going on there. Okay. And so I then asked our chief financial officer to tell me, because I wondered initially when we granted the license, and I understood what kind of business it was. It was going to be sort of like, as I understood, like a Dave and Buster's, where there's games and food and so forth. Well, I wondered if they would be able to meet our food alcohol percentage. So I asked Mr. Ingram to tell me what they were reporting as their food and alcohol percentage. Well, they haven't filed in 3 quarters, if ever. They've paid their amount, but they have not filed their report that the ordinance says they're supposed to file quarterly. Okay. I believe arrangements have been made as far as the staff goes to get that flag so that when that doesn't happen, they know it real quick now. But this is not the kind of place that we need it doesn't present a good face for the city of Canton when you have things like that. And it's unfortunate that it took the kind of a situation that occurred with the death of an individual to really demonstrate that. So I think we need to look closely at the license of this place. Now, Mr. Dyer may tell me I'm going the wrong direction, but I think we need to look at that and possibly put a place like this on probation for something, for the number of calls and the lack of filing what they're supposed to be filing according to our alcohol ordinance, and give them an opportunity to straighten it out and do what they're supposed to do according to our ordinance and kind of clean this thing up, because it doesn't look good now. And my guess is if we put some location on some kind of probation, then my guess is that they'd either clear it up or you remove the license, suspend or revoke a license. And I don't think you'd have to revoke many licenses to make sure that things got straightened out. But that's just my thoughts. That's all I have on that one. Does anyone else have anything? Any comments, questions? Okay. So I would ask that the staff take a look at not just that location, but all our alcohol licensees, and make sure that they are filing their reports like they're supposed to. Because we don't know if they're doing what they're supposed to according to our ordinance if they don't. So we need to take a real close look at that, and we need to advise them. If they're late on filing a report, we need to shoot something off to them and say, you hadn't filed this yet. If you don't file it in another 30 days, you don't have a license. And I can tell you, that license is a lot of money to these folks. But we need to do something there. It does not look good for the city to have that sort of thing going on.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Well, we need to write an ordinance giving a time frame of submitting your report, and if it's not submitted within 10 days after the deadline, this occurs. Would we?
I believe that may already be in the ordinance. I'm not sure.
It is. Part of the confusion, I think, is that there are certain reports that are due monthly and certain reports that are due quarterly. And so we receive certain reports from restaurants all the time. So one of the things we've talked about is looking into the alcohol ordinance to see if we could tie all the reports to the same time. So one, it's easier for the business. They're filing one report that's got everything at once as opposed to juggling multiple deadlines. The other thing we've looked at, and I would note since this came up, letters have been issued to all license holders referencing what they have in backlog for reports, so to speak. And so that's been dealt with. We do have a meeting set up next week that will include our finance staff, licensing staff, the police department, myself, to sit down with the owners of that establishment, particularly to talk about the issues for calls. We've done that before. We had a hotel that had similar call volume last year. We had a sit-down meeting. We talked about alternatives for security for them, things that they could do, and the call volume there has dropped dramatically. And so we do want to give that opportunity to a business to have that discussion. One of the things that we'll also look into is when we get to a point on a report and we get to a date where that report's not turned in, is having that transferred from the business license officer over to code enforcement for the issuance of a citation at that point. Then that brings it back before the judge, and there can be some process to deal with that. Right now, the process is if they don't come into compliance, it eventually would make its way to the city council for you to decide on the license. We could take it directly to the judge, and the judge could determine that perhaps the license needs to be.
We don't have anything in there about revoking anybody's license. That was one of the changes we were going to make. So we didn't.
Right. What did you say, Bobby? We don't have the authority.
We need to, we remember we had a list of proposed changes to the alcohol ordinance, and it got, didn't end up happening, but that was one of them, was adding some language about revocation.
So there's not anything about revocation?
There's some, but maybe not what you want.
Oh, okay. All right.
I meant to look at it before tonight. I forgot about it.
No, that's all right.
So I'll also participate with the staff, and we'll look through the ordinance. There are things you can do. But we would want to change. I have wanted to change the revocation language for a while to put a process in and to beef it up a little bit.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any comments? Okay. The only other thing I would mention is that something that you've been hearing a little bit about, you're going to hear a whole lot more about it in the fairly near future, is service delivery strategy. All the cities and the county, every 10 years, have to reach an agreement about the services. Is it 5 or 10 years? 5 years? I'm sorry. Every 5 years. Really, we need to change that.
Service delivery is every 10 years. Comp plan is.
Yeah, the comp plan is every 5.
I thought that they have to do service delivery updated on a 5-year cycle.
It's capital impact.
Well, actually, the service delivery agreement is not on a schedule. It comes up every 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Because of whatever 10-year requirement there is about the comprehensive plan. But it's actually we've been living with the current service delivery agreement for more than 10 years. So.
Aren't we scheduled to meet on August the 11th?
6th.
August the 6th.
That's actually for the mediation to begin.
Right.
One thing on that, I know there were 2 dates.
The 6th or the 20th, I
The
believe.
law requires that quorums exist only at the beginning. Everybody can agree that the next meeting, if there is a second one, that it doesn't have to be everybody there.
And so the discussion is that there will be a meeting on the 6th, the time and locations to be determined by the attorneys. But there will be a meeting on the 6th, and that is an advertised public meeting. And The 20th would only be advertised if it's required for action of the groups.
But the 6th, you recommend that we attend?
You need to,
You need
yes.
to.
Because
It's
we're
special
trying to,
call?
this is the formal mediation,
Right.
and so it won't count unless there's quorums at the beginning.
So do we advertise that as a special call meeting?
We do,
With it.
and each jurisdiction there will do the same thing. Everybody will open their meetings, everybody will have order, and then some of the discussion will be executive session discussion, some of it will be public discussion.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be very interesting, I think, that, because there is, several of the cities, not all of them, but most all of them, I guess, have joined together and have discussed this, and we have hired a consultant, an attorney actually, who is an expert in this area, and also there is a consultant that we have talked to who he is convinced that there are tax inequities, that some of the services that we provide within the city, and some of the services we are paying for those services, the county is not providing them within our city, and yet we're paying our county taxes to the city for some of those same type services. So it's sort of paying twice for the same thing. Okay, and there's some potential inequities. So the consultants indicates that there's some there, and we have an obligation as a council and as a city to try to make sure that we're representing the citizens the best that we can. And by representing them means you shouldn't be paying twice. It should be fair, okay? And the difficult thing is sometimes is getting some information from the county as far as the county believes, that rightfully so from their perspective, that they spend enough money that they collect from the unincorporated area to pay for all their unincorporated services, and therefore there is no inequity. But nobody has broken it down, apparently, when you ask, tell me where we pay the county. I say we, that's the taxpayers that live in this city, pay the county about roughly $5 to $6 million a year in city taxes going to the county. Just tell us where that money goes. How do you spend that money? And then we'll know. But really haven't been able to get that information because they don't track it quite that way, okay? Now, as I understand the law, they really would have to have an agreement with the city to provide any service within our city. And of course, we would have to have a contract to provide anything out with the county to provide outside there. So this is sort of complicated in many ways, but we just want to do what's fair for the constituents. You know, if they can show us where our tax dollars go, then that's all that matters. As long as we're not paying twice for services, we don't want the inequities there. We just don't want our citizens paying twice. It's just not right. So, and we want to make sure that's the case. If it comes out that everything is wonderful, that there's no double taxation or tax inequities, fine. We'll know then. And maybe the county should most likely set up a special tax district in which they collect taxes for the unincorporated area and put in a special area, and the taxes from the cities, they know where that goes. So it can be accounted for, but I'm not sure in fact, I'm pretty sure it hasn't been accounted for in that detail that the law really requires under the service delivery strategy. So anyway, just be on the lookout. It's going to be real interesting, I think. Okay, I believe that we need to go into executive session for litigation. I need a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Ms. Wilson made the motion, Mr. Goodwin seconded it. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay. We will not be, will we? No, we will not be coming back out to make any decisions.